to another episode of A Closer Perspective, brought to you by Tafadzwa Channel and hosted by yours truly, Sapi. Today, we are deep diving into the aspects of single parenting. A bit of research that I did on our conversation this evening show that 20% of Zimbabwean households are led by single mothers. It goes up in Lesotho to 25% and 40% in Swaziland. And to help me unpack the intricacies of raising a child as a single parent, I am joined this evening by Tafadzwa Mukondo and Corne Kruger. Welcome and good evening, guys.
Welcome. Good evening. Thank you for having
Hi,
us.
Sapi. Thanks.
So a little bit about Tafadzwa. She is founder of the Just magazine, which she founded in 2012, a quarterly parenting magazine that gives advice on how to raise children from conception to the age of 12. Her passion for children came when she became a single parent and sought advice on all aspects of raising her daughter. The magazine was distributed nationally and became an online magazine, added on a radio show on ZFM, which ran for 2 years, called Mummy Mondays. Then Corne is joining us from South Africa. He is a proud single father of a 9-year-old boy. He's a systems engineer by profession, as well as director of the Fathers' Right Movement, NPC, and founder of Single Fathers South Africa. A few years ago, life decided to test him, and he became a single father to his son. Life has taught him that there's little to no help out there for single fathers. And that's when he decided that he will lend a helping hand from his own personal experiences. He started a social media presence for single fathers to share and give advice and share experiences and raise their concerns. So, Corne, you can see from the stats that I just shared that the narrative is very much biased towards single mothers. I only know one single father. Can you tell us a little bit about what is this situation on the ground? What is reality? We know a lot about single mothers. What is the statistics when it comes to single fathers?
Thank you. Single fatherhood is a pretty rare thing, unfortunately, and we hope that will change. Not because we want to be single parents, but that the narrative will change, that people's minds will change. Currently, when a single father enters the world, or when he becomes a single father, it is a complete unknown. Normally when you're a parent, you fill in, or you fit in with the rest of the world, and when you become a single parent, especially a single father, then you really don't feel like you fit in anywhere. Going to school, talking to teachers, all of these things, normally is normal when you go as a couple, but when you go as a single parent, you are treated slightly differently. People know that you're a single father, and how did you become a single father? So out there's not a lot of single fathers to chat with. There's not a lot of people to share experience with, to relate with. And what we're doing now is changing that narrative so that we know about each other and we can feel more comfortable in our roles. Fortunately, we do have single mothers to look up to. So that is one of our plus points. But especially with the laws, and I know many countries has gone past this point with their law, but not yet in South Africa or many of our surrounding countries. But going forward, especially now with the law being reviewed, we definitely see some light at the end of the tunnel. We are actually engaging with the Department of Social Development to improve our situation at the moment.
Okay, so I love the fact that you said, as single fathers, you look up to single mothers for support and for help. And you touched a little bit on the legislation. So is the legislation biased towards awarding full custody to a mother rather than to the father?
Unfortunately, yes, although there's two parts to it. In the South African law, there are two fathers are seen in two different categories: married fathers and unmarried fathers. Although, regardless of their marital status, they are still the biological parent of the child. So the status, their marital status, unfortunately, does not keep in account their ability to be a parent, their nurturing and loving nature, pretty much anything else regarding parenthood. It only takes into account their marital status. So unfortunately, in that regard, yes, it is biased. We also need to understand where this comes from. Where in the past, especially according to customary law and tradition, a lot of our older folks prefer one gender above another to raise their child, and we respect that. But we, as new generation parents, do just want to move past that, and we are unfortunately hit by all of these stumbling blocks to just be the parents that we want to be. So the law definitely needs to catch up with that part. Especially in the court of law, when you do go to a court or to a police station, the law is the same between married mothers and married fathers, but the clerk sitting behind the desk will apply their own knowledge as well, or their own preference as well. Either you'll get certain advice or you will not get certain advice. And the same goes for the presiding officers, the family advocates, social workers, and everybody else involved in the case. So all of their personal bias also finds a way into your actual case. So that is where the problem comes in. The legislation is becoming more equal, but the person sitting behind the desk is not yet there. So that is definitely something that we need to work on.
Okay, so while legislation is moving forward, society and culture is lagging behind. That's basically what you're saying.
Absolutely. But we'll get
Tafi,
there. The
yeah,
more
sorry.
groups that are started, the more the society will catch on, and we are already seeing that movement happening.
Okay. Tafi, I just want to come to you. In your experience, obviously being a parenting blogger, even though when you started out the blogging and you started out the magazine, you were seeking knowledge as a new mom in terms of how do I raise my child, etc. But it is parenting. So did you find in terms of contributors or in terms of engagement with your audience as you were blogging, as even when you were doing your show, was there, did you reach out to any male parents, or was it specifically to moms?
So with the magazine, it was really for both mom and dad, because we covered from conception. So it's so important to understand that nowadays it's not as easy to fall pregnant. And in that process, it affects the husband as well as the wife. And then in the misfortunate situation where you lose the child, or you have a you have a miscarriage, it still affects the man as well. So our point was to share perspectives on both the male side and the female side. And when we started from explaining the journey that a woman goes through when it's conceiving, or IVF and all of that, we found a lot of men responding and saying, I didn't understand what my wife was going through, or things of pressure of saying, you must have a son, so you must keep pushing, and just explaining all of that. A lot of men would write and say, thank you, I didn't realize that's the amount of pressure I was putting on my wife. Even with a miscarriage, I know there were a couple of fathers that wrote in and said, no one asked me how I felt, and I felt I shouldn't feel anything or express myself because it's my wife who went through this, not me. But when we brought in experts and shared articles, we saw a lot of men saying, thank you. I was allowed to feel something. You're saying I'm not supposed to just act like it's not selfish if I say I'm sad with what happened. So the magazine, definitely, I think, because the articles you can read in your private space at your own time. A lot of people got time to reflect and were able to comment in that regard. On radio, yes, some would phone in. What I found over the years was fathers are very much involved these days. It's not just left to the mother to raise the child, to decide which type of diapers, which hospital, which pediatrician. A lot of fathers are very, very involved. So it's interesting, even listening to Corne as he's explaining how he was saying the it should be equal, that a father should have rights to take, to have guardianship over the child just the same as the mother. It's interesting to hear and to think. We believe as women we're more maternal. We feel more for our children, But just listening to other men and they're saying, I can still do the same. I wonder if is it a choice that men don't feel as maternalistic when the wife is there? Or are we saying it grows given the situation that you're in? So, like with Corne, did you grow into becoming more sympathetic toward your child? Or was it always there? Or did you just ignore it because there was someone there? You're on mute.
You're mute.
There we go. I think it depends on how you are raised, because if you are raised between people that believe that only females should be caring and nurturing, you will grow up to believe that statistic. But it is not the case. For example, in my case, in our family, we could look after children. We were trusted with somebody else's children, so we were not told that it's not my job, or this is not a guy's responsibility or man's or father's responsibility. We're told that you can do whatever you want to do. If you want to look after children, you're more than welcome to do that. I think at the end of the day, experience and knowledge is not discriminate when it comes to gender. If you know how to look after your child, you do that with your brain, your hands, and the physical way of looking after a child. So I think it really depends on the way that we raise our children, because if we do raise our children with a narrative of this is only raising children is only a female job, or doing this is only a male job, they will become who we teach them. If we teach them one way, they will become who we say they are. In my case, personally, I enjoyed looking after my newborn. It was fun. Doing the bath routine, doing the feeding routine. Yes, it's tiring, but I enjoy that. It is valuable, and I miss those days. And I wish other fathers will see it as well. Although they do not come from the same household that I did, whereby my parents said, "Listen, you can do anything you can do. If you put your mind to it, you can definitely do it." And it wasn't difficult. The only thing is, I had to block out society. The moment I blocked out society, their labels, their rules, their various ways of seeing the world through their eyes. The moment I blocked that out, everything became clear. I am not bound by somebody else's opinion.
Yeah.
I
And
think
like
that's
you
absolutely true.
and like you said, it's about information, sharing information. If you
Absolutely.
just because you're not raised in that situation, if you don't have access to that information, you're just going to do what you know. So I think I found, back to Safi's question, I did find that sharing that information helped a lot of fathers. They just didn't know. Mm.
Yes, I completely agree, because regardless of gender, no person is born with all the knowledge to raise a child. You have to ask advice. You have to listen to others. You have to experience it yourself. And as you go along, you obviously pick up that experience, and then you become the lighthouse for others to look after, to look to.
Can you, Tafi, just from your experience and from engaging with various parents, why do you think, especially, I'm not going to say especially Zim, I think it's something that's quite entrenched in our culture, if we look across the continent, our various cultures, that, and I think you kind of mentioned the point a little bit earlier, that mothers make, they are the better parent to leave the child with. Is it because society deems a female to be more responsible than a male?
I'll say yes. um, I'll, I'll have to say I guess it's how society has created the structure of a home. The mother look will look after the children, and the father will provide. So it's like, stay in your lane. Your lane is to bring home the bacon. Your lane is to raise the kids. To say, I guess and now when we look at society, roles have changed. A woman can bring home, can work and provide for the home, and a man can still look after the children. So I think it's not to say we don't have the skills, But if you're put in a box and said, this is what you're supposed to do, you will focus on that and perfect it. If you're not forced to, you're not going to have to. If I don't have to change a tire, I'm not going to do it. It is what it is. But if you force me to be in a situation where I have to change a tire, yes, I'll do it. So I think that it's more about society saying it's what you're supposed to do. The mother is a better parent.
Absolutely, that's very, very true. And society, I think Corne also mentioned it, how society puts labels, it puts its own narrative on individuals, and you then just follow that narrative. But if you block out, you actually can then live your life, the way that you feel that life should be lived. I'm hearing more and more about single mothers. I'm hearing more and more about single parenting. Is it because information is now more readily available? Or actually, we are seeing that more and more children, the structure of the home we know has changed due to a lot of circumstances. But was this the case 20 years ago? Is this a 21st century phenomenon? Are we going to see it increasing more and more as women get married later in life? Women choose not to is it cohabit, co-parent? Why are we hearing more and more about single parenting? We can start with Tafadzwa, and then Corne, you can come in on this as well.
I think Corne, you can start because
I think it has to do with our technology. I think single parent households has been around for a very long time. But if we look at Facebook, there's almost 1.2 billion Facebook users out there. And if it weren't for that, we wouldn't have known about it. We wouldn't have known about other single parents. We could not have created these support rooms as efficiently as we do now. Nuclear families where there's two divorced parents, both with their own children, has always been a thing. You just do not know about them. Where these days it's much easier to group people together. You can group yourself with others just as yourself, and therefore we know about it. We have these discussions to bring this to the media and bring this to others to support our causes. I think we'll see more of this as we continue on these discussions. So definitely, technology is making it more the information more readily available. But I also think that it's helping single parent households out there cope with all the stress and how to deal with it and share information.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
so. Your view is that it's always been there. It's just now more out there because information is more readily available than perhaps 20 years ago.
That is correct. If we go look at the various Children's Act, it wasn't always called the Children's Act. There were various acts before that. And in all those previous acts, especially right in the beginning, 1940s, 1950s, around there, the mother always had full custody, irregardless of the situation. So, people passed away, fathers worked away, divorces happened, various things happened. Later in the 90s, things started changing a little bit. And then obviously early 2000s, unmarried fathers also got some rights. So all of these things must have been there to have these laws mean something. But we just couldn't know the statistics. There was no way of actually knowing this unless you go to Stats SA or some other statistics site and put it from there. And that is now if it's been documented.
Tafadzwa?
Yeah, I think back in the day, it was not. They didn't want to look like they're promoting it. It was more of you must have a family structure, a father and a mother and children. But the reality was people were working in other towns, in other countries. With war, families are broken. So not to say someone chose to say, I'm leaving my partner, my husband, and I'm going to be a single parent, but life just made it a situation where her husband was at war and she ended up raising the kids. Whether he came back or not, no one would have predicted. So there were a lot of single parent situations. Now it's a choice. People are more open to say, I choose to say this is not working for me, so I will walk away from this situation. It's not to say the person has left the country or is working elsewhere. So you'll find it's more accepted and it's more out there. Again, with technology, like you said, it's made it more, we're more aware of one another. Who's there? What's happening? What's your situation? Will it continue? Do we expect to see it? I wouldn't want to say yes, because it's not, I mean, not to sound like it's I'm shaming it, but it wouldn't be something that I would want to promote myself. It's good for a child to have a mother and a father, because there are things you learn from the male and the female leaders in your home. Where I'm hoping the situation doesn't lead to a person saying, I will be a single parent. It does come with challenges. And the first few years of a child's life, it's pretty easy because the child doesn't speak, the child listens to you, and it's just school and home. There's not much opinion coming through. When they get to 6, 7, 8, they start asking questions. And then all of a sudden, the decision you made, the choice you made, not to say it was bad. Some people have to become single parents because it's safer, or it's just how it is, or they just couldn't find a partner to be with. So I'm not saying those reasons are wrong, but you then have to answer those questions that the child's asking. Where's mom? Where's dad? Why did mom leave? Why did dad leave? Even just puberty, who's going to explain that? If you have a boy, if I have a boy, how am I going to explain the male developments? There's only so much Google can tell me, and there's only so much uncles and grandfathers and can say. There's something that the bond that a child has with their father is so important, and there's the bond that a child has with their mother that's also very important. So it will probably continue, but it's something that I think if someone chooses it, information is so important to say. You need to sit with someone and they go with you every step of a child's development, and say, when have you thought about this age? What are you going to deal with that? Have you thought about this age? Have you thought about that age? So you don't then get to the point where the child asks a question and you're so angry because you don't have the answer, and then you stop answering. It creates a rift between you and the parent. So I think it's something that, yes, it's going to keep happening, but we should share our experiences. And it's a lot of talking. For someone who wants to get into it, you need to ask a lot of questions.
Well said. Well said, Tafi. And you just bring me to my next question, Corne, which I'll ask you, because you shared with us that life happened and you found yourself as a single parent. Tafi just mentioned that in the first couple of a child's life, 1 year, 2 years, yeah, it's fairly simple because it's pretty much one way. It's pushing as the grown-up in that relationship. But what changed for you when you suddenly found yourself and life threw the circumstance, and you found yourself now having to raise your son on your own? What changed, and what has life been like for you, and what are you experiencing, and what kind of drove you to start the Fathers' Rights movement?
Absolutely. You don't plan to become a single father or a single parent for that matter. So when it does happen, you think about a lot of things. Listen, what am I missing? What have I not been doing that I need to teach myself on how to do? And am I doing it correctly? Am I being nurturing enough? Am I being caring enough? Am I doing this correctly? There's so many unknowns. And I think it's more difficult for a younger person to do, because they look at other adults in a way, more experienced adults, and they look at them and think, listen, I already feel somewhat less worthy because you do it with a smile. You do it so well. You carry this parenting style with you so well, and then, am I doing this correctly? So there's so much that you think about and that you have to learn. But I think as time goes on, you realize that, actually this is not too bad, because you get to see these other parents carrying their parenting style really well, and you obviously learn from them because you have experience, or they have experience that you are picking up on. I think in my case, I had to figure out how to properly connect with the schools and the teachers and everybody out there, because in the past it wasn't so much of an issue. I mean, I normally went in the schools myself as well, um, but they treated you differently. It's as if they expected you to need a little bit more help, which in my case wasn't the case. But I had to figure out how to handle these people and how to talk to with more confidence, purely because I need to put them at ease. I've noticed many times that you need to put other people at ease because they've got certain social expectations of how you should be doing or how you should be faring in this. And then
So
the
it's more
moment you
about
tell
the
them,
other people. Sorry to cut you. I just wanted, because I'm finding it quite interesting in terms of the way you're responding. So it's more about the other people, because you mentioned quite specifically school. So obviously it's a dynamic change there when suddenly it's just you on your own without your partner. And you're the one that's coming to Parents' Day, you're picking the kids up, and they're the ones that are uneasy. So you're saying you have to work a lot harder to make them feel comfortable. Like, guys, I know what I'm doing. You don't have to worry about me. Is that what you're saying?
that is correct, because especially in the beginning, people are very weary. It's like, are you okay? Are you doing fine? Listen, do I need to help you a little bit further on this? And eventually they tell you, listen, you're actually doing a perfect job. You're doing really well. And then the confidence starts building up, and you can actually act normally in that way. So a lot of what I've learned is managing other people's expectations of you, because they all have different expectations. They all come from different religions, different backgrounds, different races, different financial classes. And I think when you figure that out, you can actually go through this very easily. You can actually offer advice to everybody else. Like, it's not that hard to do this. So I've been a parent now for about 3 years. And I've obviously learned quite a lot. My life has been way more fulfilling for the both of us. And I can definitely say that I've felt that I've learned more than other parents in this is in or other parents in a normal family would have, because I do understand both sides way much clearer or much better. You know, there's that fine line between discipline and nurturing right after that, where you have to figure both out. You have to discipline your child, but you also need to make your child understand that you aren't angry or cross at them. You are cross at what they did. Therefore, the relationship between myself and you does not change, but we are talking directly to the little thing that happened. And then afterwards, everything is still fine. Let's continue cooking, or let's continue doing this, and everything is sorted. It's those little things that I think many of the normal married couples out there don't have to do, because the one will discipline the child and the other one will just take care of the rest. And they won't necessarily always talk about this.
Tafi, is that the same from a single mother perspective? What have you heard and what's been your experience from single mothers? He talked about being more just, I think, aware of the other people. He also talked about that fine line between discipline and the nurturing side. When we grew up, the father's the disciplinarian and the mom's the love. So whenever something was wrong, your mom would always say, I'm going to tell your dad. But now here you are and you are both. What's been your experience with single mothers? Do they share the same sort of struggles as Corne has just described?
It's definitely hard, because you naturally, you as a mother, you want to love and protect and look after this child, but you end up worrying if you're putting them in this cocoon of my precious little angel, and you become this hovering, the helicopter parent. Don't No one touches my kid, no one says this to my kid, no one. And the advantage of that is you're very involved in your child's life, but the disadvantage is you're creating this child that knows I'm untouchable. So you're creating a little monster for the teachers and anyone else who wants to play with this kid, because they can do and say whatever they want because they know that you're going to protect them. So the transition for most moms is from, there are those who are like, I need to be stronger, but I can't. And then there are those who are like, I have to be strong with you because it's just me. And so they become very tough on the kids, and then the kid is forced to live under these rules and regulations, and don't talk to boys, and your homework, and they have such a schedule. They're so busy because the mother's like, I don't want society to blame me for who you become because I'm a single mother. And then there are those who they feel bad because they've put their children in a situation where it's a single parent home. So finding that balance to say, I'm spoiling you because I feel bad, but I should also discipline you. It's really, really a struggle. And even with some of the men that I've seen, I know one dad, he felt bad because the ex wasn't involved in the child's life. So he really made sure that every day it was, are you okay? Do you need this? The kid asked for anything and he'd do it. So it's on both sides that you find there's really much a lot of guilt with single parenting, and even when you're trying to make society feel better, it's more you're feeling judged. You think they're questioning your capability. I'll speak as a woman, because you walk into the school, we don't have the same pressure where if a father's walking in and he's unpacking the bag and checking the lunchbox, of course we'd all be like, okay. But if it's me walking in as a mom, no one's going to question it. Maybe over time, the child's behavior will let the teacher know that there's no dad involved. So there's never an obvious, oh, she's a single mom. It's something that happens. So that pressure's off. But you then start wondering. I've seen a lot of women who think people are judging them. So they overcompensate, or they become very protective or very angry of like protective of their space and their child's space, or they become very angry and so very unapproachable. So it's a lot of pressure. And then there's some who are just very comfortable with it, and they're just like, this is what it is. So it's really a personal journey to discover who you are as you're raising this child, because you're dealing with a lot of I'll say some face rejection, and they say, why me? Why didn't it work out? Or why did my person have to pass away? Why did my person have to leave the country? Why did my person have to leave me? So within that, it's projected out in their behavior and how they raise the kids. So it's a lot of challenges. It's a mix of emotions of the child and the parent.
Let's talk about finances. Normally, Corne, the man, brings home the bacon. How does finances work when you are a single father? And it's a case of your wife has left, it's either divorce or there's just been this choice to maybe raise the child separately. How do you handle the aspect of finances as a single parent? And then, Taf, you can give us the female perspective of that.
Thank you. That is quite sort of interesting one. I'm fairly fortunate to do get support from my child's mother, which is great, although it is obviously very limited. I think we live in a country where, fortunately, the work rate for females went from, I think, the 1980s from 20% up to, I think last year's statistic was about 45 to 46% employment rate, which is brilliant. So I think for many other single fathers out there, this might not be the case, because purely based off statistics. And a lot of people do believe that fathers should only provide an income, mostly financial, whereby the mother shouldn't, which obviously leaves a space where, when the norm according to society is not followed, where the father has the custody, the mother will obviously not either have work or not earn enough to make a proper contribution. Now, if I say the word proper, that is a very difficult thing to figure out, because if one parent earns a lot, another one does not, there's obviously a pretty big discrepancy, and then that's where the variable word proper comes in. Fortunately for me, I've been I've been doing pretty okay, where I will match everything up. So I'm a very fairly analytical person. I will go 2 or 3 years ahead and work out what will I need, what will my child need, how are we going to make this work. We only have this spot. Let's divide the spots in this way. So in my case, it has worked okay, but it's because I'm a very analytical person. But that does not speak true of most of the other men out there, which normally does, hard labor, construction workers, truck drivers, all of those people. Now, I sit and I work with numbers fairly often, so I naturally built up the skill as we went along. But many other people have not built up the skill because they are truck drivers, they are construction workers, and there's lots of different professions out there that does not require analytical skills, which is perfectly fine. So I think in my case it was okay, but for many other fathers out there, and especially on the single fathers groups that we have, you can definitely see they do struggle with it. I mean, there are ways to help, but I think single mothers do have the same issue as well. But I think it's just a little bit different, and I think Tafi, you will be able to explain more on that part.
What I'm definitely hearing you say is fathers have the same challenges as well around balancing the finances when they're doing it on their own. Whereas the expectation, I think, would be fathers are fine and they would hardly probably need the female to step in financially. Tafi?
Yes, and I think there's a really good reason for it. Normally when the father's less involved and working more, you obviously earn a little bit more. But when you don't do that, you obviously save on the amount of hours that you work. So instead of working 10 or 12 hours a day, you will only work your maybe 7 to 8 hours a day, which is minimum that you can work. Therefore, you'll get paid the minimum amount that the company will allow. So it does definitely make a difference, and I think that is a reason why the old society way of raising a family or having a family works well, because the one parent could spend 15, 16 hours a day bringing in money. And when you're a single parent, you just can't do that. You have to find that balance between the two, and it obviously causes that you have a less of an income because you have to spend more time with your children. So I think the scales will actually equalize the more single fathers they are.
Yeah,
Very
Tafi?
interesting. It's interesting. I mean, when you're asking, should the father provide? Yes, the father should provide. What are you doing? Because I can't picture myself giving, my ex money to look after the kids. It's really like, what do we, what, it doesn't make sense. But again, it's society. I think here, money is power. And that's in terms of maintenance and any money that you receive from your ex. It's power over you. And the more money they give or the more you need, the more power they have. So you'll find with certain single moms, they'd rather fend for themselves. It's hard, but the issue of knowing, look, every month your child needs clothes. Why should I remind you? Or every month your child needs to eat. Why should I have to remind you that you need to send $100 every month? And you'll find, some women saying he enjoys the fact that I have to call him. So every month, though it's agreed in court, you're supposed to give every month on a certain day or by a certain deadline. They'll pass the deadline and they'll expect a call. So it's very exhausting for some women because they're like, I'm trying to move on with my life, but you're forcing me to communicate with you. So now I've taken the decision to say, I'm going to fend for myself. Very, very hard. And like Corne said, it's a lot of hours. So someone's suffering. It's either work is suffering or your child is suffering. You're suffering as the parent either way, but there's those two variables. Then you have those who don't have that option to say, I'll do it myself. So they're forced to have to beg, play to his tune until he gives because they don't have that option. So that's a tough one because you'd want to say, as a parent, as a mother, you'd want to say, I don't want to do this, but I'm in a situation where I have to. And I understand, their situation. It's very hard. Then you have those where the parent contributes a certain percentage, the father contributes a certain percentage, and they cover the other bit. So that one works out because you're able to say, okay, so I have to work on this section. That part is covered. That's a favorable outcome as compared to the others. But everyone I've met is on either side, and you listen to the situation, you listen to the scenario. There's not much advice you can give, because especially for the one where she's like, I'm so exhausted, he expects me to follow him around, or go beg this relative, go beg that relative, and you'd love to empower them, or love to give them that option, but that's the scenario they're in. So yeah, here it's very, very, very hard. But I think I haven't come across a scenario where the wife pays the father who has custody. Usually here, if that happens, it means the father's covering everything.
Okay. There's a question for Corne from Tisetso, joining us from Facebook. Corne, have you found that men also go the maintenance court route in your experience, and from maybe people sharing on the men's rights group, father's rights group, sorry?
Yes. So there's a few cases, although they normally turn out a little bit differently. I had to go the maintenance court route as well, although I unfortunately experienced quite a bit of bias when I went to the maintenance court, because I asked me to go sit in a corner, and then they normally do other things, and then they'll come back to you and say, listen, we'll help you a little bit later, but let's just chat to you. Okay, that's how my ex-wife. So men generally avoid that because you do not feel welcome, and I've seen this many times with many of the fathers that approach me for help. They just do not feel welcome. They do not feel help. Normally, when the clerk sits there and you need to go present your story, they will help you, but they won't really help you, which is quite interesting. And that's where the personal bias for the regarding clerks and presiding officers comes in. But yes, they do. If you do things correctly, then yes, you can definitely go the maintenance route. But I think we struggle with exactly the same battles that single mothers battle with. And I think it is, we sit in a country with 45% worklessness rate. So it is very difficult trying to claim maintenance from somebody that does not either have a job or earn very little, because you have to live at the end of the day. I do know the calculation that they use to work out maintenance per person and per child. And unfortunately, it really does not suffice for the needs of children. But yes, men do sometimes go the maintenance route. But I do know of many men that just said, listen, I'll just figure it out myself. It's not worth the extra stress. It's not worth sitting there and not being helped. It's not worth my dignity going there, because they just do not want to help me, or they look at me funny, or whatever else the case might be. If I had the money to appoint a representative, they would probably do it more often. But yes, it does happen, but not that often.
Again, society's biases coming through then, and people are probably looking and think this guy must be joking, or is this some sort of prank? How can a father come to court and wanting maintenance? So it's very unfortunate, like you're saying, that society is taking so long to catch up to legislation as it moves along. Let's talk about romance. So here you've met someone else now, and you're really liking them. At what point do you introduce them to your child's children? How do you navigate romantic relationships as a single parent? And either of you guys can take that up first.
Sorry, there we go. Okay, so I think it is a very interesting topic. So I think it depends on your age and in which age bracket you fit into. I think the older you are, in a way, the easier it becomes, especially if the children is a little bit older. But I would say if you're in your late 20s, maybe early 30s, it's really a challenge, because you've got all of these inexperienced parents trying to navigate through being a single parent, not having kids, you having kids, I'm having my own kids, and then many times nuclear families where both parents have children obviously meet, And normally those parents actually succeed because they both understand the challenges. They've both been through it. They both can relate. The children are generally, depending on your age, the same age. So they tend to get along really well, which kind of helps. But I think if you are older, that becomes more difficult because then you've got certain people with older children, certain people with younger children. So that obviously makes the romance a little bit more difficult because one parent is way more experienced and they don't always see eye to eye. And I think it also depends on whose children is older, because in a lot of families, the man is obviously seen as the head of the home, which means you will handle discipline, you will handle where we are heading, all of these things. And then the single mother that's been doing this for 3 or 4 years will not feel the same because she's now managed to figure out where she's going and how to run the household and how to lead and how to be the head of the house. And now she needs to fall back a step again to allow for society to play a role again. So I think that becomes fairly difficult for a lot of parents. I think also, managing discipline, because we do all come from different races, religions. We've got different manners, and trying to find a median between how discipline is being done is pretty difficult, especially when the other parents are involved, because the non-custodial parents might feel unhappy with the way that you are disciplining their children, even though their children is in your house, and the same other way around. You might feel that they are disciplining your child too much when they are there for a weekend, or you feel that they are not disciplined, or they are too disciplined, or too strict with your children. So there's always that additional load that parents needs to will carry and figure out how they're going to manage this. And I mean, these days there's lots of couples that's from different religions or different races, and I think that poses some difficulties as well, especially with the parents, because certain parents believe my grandchildren needs to be raised in this way, but I'm from a different religion or a different race, so I would like my children to be raised that way. And now the parents of those children sit in the middle, and they need to kind of navigate the storm that they've put themselves into. But it's not as easy as saying you put yourself into it. That is just life, unfortunately. So yes.
Yeah.
What say mothers?
It's interesting that he said, did you say younger is easier? Did you say that?
I think older people, more experienced people, might find it a bit easier because they've been through those stages where they don't know how to do things, and they knew other people, and they kind of matured in a way.
Okay, so you spoke on so many perspectives that I hadn't really thought of, when we were discussing the question. With younger, I think there's a lot more pressure if you meet someone who is not a parent because they want to have a child. So you're still navigating raising your kids, and then you have someone who you love and you'd obviously want to have a kid with them, but you're not ready. So you have that situation where you end up having another kid. The dynamics are different. Family, like you were saying, discipline is different. Your child may suffer. You're now paying more attention to this new relationship and this new child. So I think younger, it's more complicated. I would say, if you're lucky to find someone who has kids, that's great. But again, how you parent, background values all come into play, and this blending is not easy. I have seen for a lot of people it's not easy. And then when you're older, you're more set in your ways. The window of I want to have another kid kind of goes because you're like, my energy levels have dwindled. This young one is able to fend for herself or himself. Why should I look at a diaper again? And then you meet someone who hasn't had a kid and he meets you and he wants a kid and you're like, no, please no. Yeah, so it gets so on both ends, it's so hard because like you're saying, you've matured, you found yourself. You're finally saying, I figured out how to raise this child. I figured myself out in this single parent situation, and I figured out my place in the world. And then this person comes with this dynamic. Then you have a kid older and you're like, wow. And then the age gap, now the kids are like years apart. You're starting with the teacher again. Hi, I'm not the grandmother. I'm the parent. So it's really, really complicated. And then there's the part of, when do I introduce this person to my children? And so many, I've heard so many different opinions. And it's nice how the married ones all have an opinion as well. And you're like, what would you like? It's anyway, but they also have an opinion. And I've heard some say at the beginning, because you want to see how he interacts with your kids, or he or she interacts with your kids. It's, I don't know. Because tomorrow he may irritate you. And dating someone who's raising a kid, a single parent, it's very hard. You're more irritable, you're more sensitive, and you're more like picky. So anything can just put you off someone. So you meet them today, next week you're done. And now what do you say to your kids? Then it's maybe 3 months down the line. And then it's, the kids must know each other, and then it's meet the parents, meet the grandparents, and then now all your lives are involved, and then months or years down the line you break up. It gets very messy. um I wouldn't know what to advise anybody. It's a different situation for everybody. I may understand someone who says, I have nowhere to put my kids, it's just me and my kids, so when I hang out with this person, I'm with my kids. There's that. And then there's those who say, I need someone and I want to see how that person reacts with my kids and I want them to be involved from day one. Okay, that's your decision. And then there's some who wait. And then the unfortunate situation is, if your kids don't like him, or he doesn't like your kids, or he or she, what do? Do you continue with the relationship and say, okay, kids, go to your dad or mom? Or do you say to him, I can't, it's my kids first? So it's, yeah, as romance is a very nice word, but it's not what single parenting is. It's a lot of moving pieces, and hopefully the puzzle pieces come together. You find a situation where it works. It's anyone's guess at this point.
It sounds so complex, but it's definitely as individual as I think each parent
Yes.
is. So, guys, I'd like to just wind down now and maybe ask one last questions before we close our tonight's episode. What more should be done to raise awareness, both of what single moms go through and where they can get help, and single fathers? So, single parenting is here. It's not something like we said earlier. You said that this, we're not encouraging it, but certainly there's more of it and we're more aware of it. What more could be done to raise awareness, to help have support structures outside of family and friends to assist both? Because I'm hearing that the struggles and the challenges are very similar. So it's the same side. It's different sides of the same coin. And there just needs to be some structure to assist our single parents. Maybe just some last thoughts from you, Tafi, and then Corne will answer as well.
Definitely support groups, I'll say in plural, are important, because each group will be catering to your different needs. So you may find people find support at church. There may be other single moms that are there. And the value of church is something that group can cater to, and they can guide you and walk with you for your children. There's those who, in a situation where they're the finances of the family, of the household, you'll need someone who understands that. You can't go to someone who's part paying or who's fully funded. They won't understand that. So finding your footing for everything. Not everyone can cater to the same need. My situation is different from my friend in this group, in that group, in that group, but there's a common denominator within each group that makes me a whole human being. I'm able to function. I'm able to turn to my friend and say, can you take the kids? because I cannot cope today. Whereas another group will be like, suck it up. You have to do it. You know, you can't just baby dump. But and then there's some way I'm able to cry, and then there's some way I'm able to vent about the situation. And there's some way you're just able to say, I'm just going out as girls. And you'll need that. There's some who won't understand it, and there's some that will. So I think without it's not something you want to shout and put like a tattoo and say, hey, I'm a single parent, come play with me or come help me. But if you're more, if you talk more, because it's an individual thing, you can, there are enough groups, there are enough support groups, there are enough church groups, but you may not be comfortable. But it's important for a person to say, I'm at the stage where I'm open enough to ask for assistance. I'm open enough to say I need help personally for my growth. I need support. Yes, there are those who have or who are blessed with family members who can help, but you also need outside support. So I think depending on the stage of single parenting, it's really up to the person to be able to say, I'm ready for help, or I'm ready to meet other single parents.
Awesome. Thank you. Corne?
I really love how you said that you have to accept help. I generally don't like to generalize genders and pretty much everything in life, but I've tend to notice that men do not ask for help that often. And I think one of the things that we do preach is, listen, you need to be able to accept whatever somebody else is willing to share with you. Because even though you are taught to fend for yourself and always fight and always figure things out and make a plan, do all of these things all on your own, it shouldn't have to be like that. Society can change. You do not have to fit into how other people do things. Therefore, you can go out. You can accept advice. And you know what? I think the interesting thing is, especially like in a street, like in my street, pretty much everybody knows I'm a single parent, and it makes things easier because when I've got a difficult day and I say, listen, I'm running around today, I'm trying to do this, they'll say, listen, doesn't want to come play here today. I'll take him off your hands for an hour or two. It's like, wow, thank you very much. Let's do that. I think the perspectives are so much different. On a different level, if we talk about the country and how things are done in our countries, especially for single fathers, there's no support from either government or non-profit organizations or anything like that. If things become difficult, there's nowhere to reach out to, and there's literally nowhere to reach out to, because I've tried many times, not for myself, but for all the various fathers that come through our support groups. Phone the Department of Social Development, phone your various local organizations, the welfares. There is pretty much no support at all. So that is something that the government will need to start looking into, and they need to change it, because if they will change their posture, other non-profit organizations will start doing the same thing, because they will feel, listen, they are going to get somebody, they will get some funding. It is worth doing. And I think one of the biggest things for single parents is obviously, getting support at home, because that is where you spend most of your time, most of your effort goes into what's happening in your life, in your child's life. Allow family to help you if you do have that option. Allow friends to offer, listen, look after their children, or let's go out, let's do this or do that. And I think if I can speak to extended family and maybe friends, invite your single parents over for social events, because I think many times they do not do that because single parents do not fit in with the married couples at social events, because you can't go with somebody. And I think that makes things slightly more difficult. So I think that's it. If we just need to be more accepting of help and reach out, people will be more willing to help you if you actually just say, listen, what's the chance of you helping me today with this? You do not have to if you don't want to, but they will understand what you're going through and they will actually reach out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Corne, just one last thing. What is how do we find Single Fathers Rights Group on Facebook? How are you, what's your name if I'm searching, so that in case some of our audiences want to actually reach out?
Okay, so we have two portions to this. So there's the Fathers' Rights Movement of South Africa, NPC. If you type that into Google or onto Facebook, you'll immediately get to that page. And then we also have the Singles Fathers Essay. So just Single Fathers Essay on Facebook. There's a group and page, so you can join both. And you'll also see there's a link to the WhatsApp that you can join, and that will obviously bring you into one of my groups, and my cell phone numbers on there as well for single fathers looking to join the groups.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and so enlightening to have both perspectives represented today. Single parenting is definitely a great phenomenon that is 21st century. Things started much earlier, but that we are faced with, and it's important that we know how to deal with it. And the most important thing is single parenting, father or mother. So your views have been fantastic. Africa, thank you so much for joining in. Join us for our next edition of Closer Perspective. Otherwise, for tonight, have a good evening, and whatever you're doing, make sure that you're safe. Thank you, guys, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.